Sorry, I thought I was going to be more ready than I am.
You're listening to the Theology of Games podcast, your source for gaming news, reviews, and interviews with the top voices in the industry. Find us online at theologyofgames.com. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Firestone and Jeremiah Isley.
Hey, welcome to episode 4, A New Hope. No, it's Theology of Games. Wow, I just started the whole thing off with a Star Wars reference. It's going to be that kind of night.
It's a little early, isn't it, Jeremiah?
I got to get it in while I can. Hey, that's my name, Jeremiah, and Scott's joining me in Colorado. Hey, Scott, how's it going?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Sure.
Ready to get things rolling here. We have got a ton of stuff this month, including an interview with Lance Hill of Funhill Games, designer of Kings of Israel, which looks like a very cool co-op, biblically themed game. We also have some new segments for you, as well as a review of Mayfair's Asgard's Chosen, which claims to be a clever game. We will find that out very shortly here. But first, we're going to start off with some headlines. So it would be awesome if we had like a headline thing, like like music.
I'm not kidding. When you said it's time for headlines, I was thinking, man, it'd be cool if I had that. I'm not joking.
Man, if we were good at podcasting, it would be awesome.
That is too bad we're not. So.
Yeah, I know. We're terrible.
Hey, it's headlines. That wasn't annoying. Okay.
Today in the news. So, at SpielCon, Marvel Dice was unveiled by WizKids. Yes, dice building has been rehashed again. What do you think about this?
I watched a video that the Geek produced about this game. And, you know, at first blush, you see cards with characters, you see dice with, you know, all unique dice, and you think, oh, it's going to be couriers with Marvel.
Right.
You would be wrong. They made it worse. They made it bad.
What?
Yes, so here's the deal. You come to
How
the
can they do
table
that?
with a kind of a pre-built army almost. So I might be playing... I can't remember exactly the breakdown, but you're given like...
Isn't it like Avengers versus X-Men or something?
Yeah, I think the first basic game will be that. So you're coming to the table with like 8 cards and 20 dice. And so you can divide those dice in any way. So one character might only have 2 dice that you're bringing to the game, and another one might have 5. And so you're coming here, and then it's, in that sense, then it is like Couriers, where you're trying to build up money to buy these dice to add to your dice pool and things like that. But the part that really kills it for me is they're going to make booster packs for these. So,
oh, no.
Yes. For 99 cents, you can buy a card and 2 dice, one of which is guaranteed to match the card that comes with it. The other may or may not. And it may match the dice may match other cards that were in the base set or other expansions or whatever. But there's a rarity to it. So there's going to be commons, uncommons, rares, and super rares. That kills it, because if I come to the table with a super rare, you know, Colossus or something like that, then I'm just gonna beat you.
You're gonna mop the floor.
Yeah.
You know, we're in the era of, if you want to do something collectible, it better have the initials MTG, and otherwise, we're in the era of living card games, and when you buy a game, you want to have a complete set, and that's that. You know, I get it. WizKids still sells HeroClix, and those are collectible, and there's rarity to them, which is great. But come on, we don't need that with dice. Like, just give us an awesome game, and let's play that. So
right, that is just a terrible idea, WizKids.
I'm very disappointed to hear that.
That idea is full of whiz, kid. Okay.
Hey-oo. All right, next up, Dead of Winter from Plaid Hat Games. Yet another zombie game, but is it a zombie game? Do we need another zombie game?
No.
Or, yeah, I don't think we do, but the buzz around this one's pretty good. Do you even, like, do we need more zombies in general in life?
I don't mind zombies in general. I'm not somebody that, I hate everything zombie. But I also think we've reached a tipping point where we have TV shows and books and movies and I just think it's enough, and you better be really unique with your zombies if you're going to come out with something zombie-ish.
Yeah, I feel like where zombies are going the route of vampires, like vampires have been successfully used in media and culture that they had to start sparkling. So what can you do more with zombies that hasn't been done? My favorite zombie game is Zombie Flux, but it's more because I just like thematically what they did with the cards, and they introduced creepers, and there's goofy stuff like the Ungoal where all the zombies come and kill everybody at the table and nobody wins because that's the kind of game it is. Because I know you love those.
Oh yeah, that sounds so fun! I would rather actually be eaten alive by zombies, I think, than play that.
Yeah. But, so Dead of Winter, I don't know, the buzz around this one's been really good.
The thing that's intriguing about it is that the zombies sound like they're just a MacGuffin to bring us into the mechanics of the game, which are really a hidden role, deduction game where you're really, and I suppose like most of the interesting zombie things out there, it's not really about the zombies, it's really about the people, and it's really about the interactions, and it's really about how bad people become when they're up against the wall and when their lives are in danger or the lives of loved ones or whatever.
Right.
So, in that
bad
sense,
times bring out the best in some and the worst in others,
yes,
and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd be interested to look a little further into this one, but if it's just another zombie smash kind of going around trying to kill zombies, I think I could pass on it, but that really sounds more interesting.
Yeah, I have high hopes for it.
And you use the term MacGuffin, which is one of my favorite terms, so you get extra points for that segment.
It's like MacGyver,
all right.
Only Scottish.
Let's move on. Next headline is Mayfair kind of Microsofted. That's not even a real term. Lookout Games. They announced it during Essen, and I don't know. Is that good or is that bad? What do you think?
I don't think it's great. Partly because Mayfair has a deal with online game stores and local game stores that they can only sell their games at retail. And they did that in an effort to try and save the friendly local game store, because then online stores can't undercut their price.
Sure.
So if everybody has to sell at the same price, then you have maybe more incentive to go down to your friendly local game store. I get that. But at the same time, what that means for me is Lookout Games were already really expensive games, even before Mayfair owned them. So I was probably, I don't want to upset anyone, but I was probably going to buy those games anyway at an online store if I was going to buy one.
Sure.
So now that it's going to be MSRP, I'm not sure what the MSRP on the new game Caverna is, that just came out, and it has the Mayfair branding on it. And
it's already got the logo, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a copy of it that somebody got back from Essen, and I'm going to try and see if I can find Caverna here. Nope. Anyway, I don't know what the MSRP on it's going to be, but it's probably going to be high, and I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like paying a lot for my game.
Right. There's not a good way to get a deal on it now.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because I look at things like this and, obviously that price point is an issue, but, I wonder if this is something that's going to start happening with some of the bigger companies, because they might be seeing there's a piece of the pie out there that they're not getting because of so many companies going through Kickstarter and crowdfunding and that sort of thing. And instead of letting them go that route, if they kind of snatch up some of these smaller companies, they can kind of get a bigger market share. I wonder if, whether that's good or bad, or if it's just going to create more competition and up the game, the level that everybody has to get to get up their fair share of the market. That might be a good thing, but I don't know if I would, again, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing necessarily, if I have a total opinion on that, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how Kickstarter might be affecting things like this.
I never thought about it that way. I just know I like competition.
Mm-hmm.
So the more companies that are out there, and if one of them can rise and become nimble and put out great games and do a great job, good for them. And often when they get bought, they go back to stinking up the joint, because then you're suddenly bogged down by the weight of this larger company that does things slower and they're more expensive and
sure. Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to keep our eye on that and see how that plays out. All right, last headline. Fantasy Flight is finally releasing Balance of the Force, which is the multiplayer deluxe expansion for the Star Wars, the card game. What took them so long? It's been like a year now. And I wanted to bring this up because I played the game when it first came out. I've played it several times. A few of my friends really enjoy it. But, if you are playing the Rebel Alliance, if you're playing the light side, you plan on getting demolished every time. You can tell that this game was designed to be multiplayer. It was designed to have more than one light side player teaming up against the dark side player, because the Empire is so powerful. Why did it take them a year to get this out? And do you think this is going to save this game this late in the game? Pun intended.
I have avoided. I mean, I played the game I think twice. I didn't buy a copy, basically because I only have margin for so many LCGs, and at this point in my life, it's Lord of the Rings and Netrunner, and I'm already way behind on those. So there was never a chance I was going to jump into this one unless, I played it and it was just the most amazing thing ever. So for me, I don't really care. I appreciate. I understand that it's probably better with this expansion, and that that it will help the game and make it better. So I think that's great. It is a little weird that it took that long. It makes me wonder, were there some issues that were coming out, some balance issues, and were they having a hard time actually fitting this multiplayer thing into it, even though it sounds like it was originally meant to be multiplayer? Were they now having a problem putting it in there?
Yeah, like if you read the rule book in the base game, it talks about multiplayer, more than one light side players, and it's all in there. That was part of the original plan. I wonder, they went through a major overhaul before this game came out and delayed the original release almost a year. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if they even rushed that, even though it seems that they didn't. Maybe they rushed that and they had to take extra time to fully develop the multiplayer aspects of this thing. But I'm glad to see that it's out. I know I have friends that will probably be picking that up, so I will probably get a chance to play it under the new format, the new multiplayer thing, and hopefully it'll save the game, because I love the uniqueness of how you build the decks in this game and all the command sets and all that stuff. I think it's really clever. I think it's really interesting, but it was so unbalanced that it was almost not fun. So
you're making me glad I chose the way I did.
Yes, and I'm terribly behind on my Lord of the Rings sets as well. So
yeah, they don't seem to have a problem getting those out the door.
No, they do not. All right, that was the headlines for this month. There should be like loud swooping sounds and things like that.
Oh,
too.
like eagles buzzing us from above?
No, like whooshes and whoosh and, flashing things. I don't know. That's more of a video thing, I guess.
I have a face for radio.
That's right. Don't we all?
All right.
Let's move on to our next segment.
Let's do it. It's a new one. It's called Fill in the Blank.
Do we have a jingle for that?
No, I just made one. I kind of sang it.
You kind of did.
Fill in the blank.
We need to work on that one.
That was terrible. It's called Fill in the Blank. Doesn't that sound exciting?
So it does. It sounds really exciting. We have 3 sentences, and we're going to fill in the blank. And I thought it would be cool if our listeners would find us online and also fill in the blank as well with their answers to these questions, because wouldn't that be fun?
It would be fun. In fact, we're probably going to ask these questions on our Facebook page.
That would be the place to find them.
So answer them when we ask that.
That's right. Please.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah. All right. So number 1, fill in the blank. The number 1 game on my Christmas list is
Terra Mystica.
Terra Mystica. Isn't that like $174?
It is very expensive. But it is the second edition has hit the shores, and it is in game stores right now. It's still pretty expensive, just because it's a Z-Man game. But also, I think the MSRP on it is like $80.
Wow.
Yeah, but I've heard nothing.
So I might have been exaggerating a little bit with the $174 thing.
But it was very expensive when it was out of print.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about that. I haven't played it yet. You've played it.
No,
correct?
I have not. My group has played it, but
okay.
I was never in any of the games.
Oh, you were the last kid picked for dodgeball then. Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of good things about it. There are, I don't know that I have like one like big game that I really want. I actually got 2 games for my birthday just recently, which were tops on my list. So there's like smaller games like Hanabi and things like that I really want to get. So I would say
you want to get Hanabi.
Yeah, that's heard. Maybe the deluxe version would be cool I don't know if that's going to be out by Christmas though.
I don't know.
But yeah, things like that. I like to have a good handful of fillers that are fun, and I'm sure there's some stuff that I could catch up on. So I guess that would be my number 1 on my Christmas list, would be like Hanabi and maybe a few fillers like that.
What a cop-out answer. Come on.
Well, what?
The number 1 game. It wasn't like the number 1 games and things. It was the number 1 game.
Okay, so Hanabi would be my number 1 game.
Okay, thank you for committing.
Or one of the new deluxe expansions for the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
The card game. Because I'm way behind.
Yeah, as am I.
Yeah. All right.
Number 2.
Number 2. Here we go.
Okay, here's the question for you, Jeremiah. Okay. I think papercraft games are blank.
I think papercraft games are the Pinterest of the gaming world. They're interesting, and I like the creativity behind it, like the station of the game that you play with it. we just reported there's a Kickstarter going on for a game called Viking Horde that is these Viking ships that look like pirate ships, which is why I like them. But they look, they make them out of paper and they send them to you and you put them together, tab A into slot B and that sort of thing. I like how that looks. I'm wondering mechanically how it all works and how great it's going to be. But it seems to be something that's kind of emerging. I've seen more and more of this, especially through Kickstarter. I believe they are the Pinterest of the gaming community. What about you? What would your blank be there?
I think papercraft games are too much work. I know a lot of people are into print and play and DIY and pimping out their games with, these special things that they print out. And that is too much work for me. I don't care. I'm willing to pay the money to have someone else produce that game for me. So
absolutely
putting together, I'm not opposed to papercraft. I have a friend, his wife is huge into papercraft. They have stuff all over their basement of papercraft. She has papercraft dojos and big Japanese temples, and she has working papercraft. Like one of them, you turn a crank and a guy on a horse rides his horse.
What?
Yeah, it is crazy. So I like
unreal.
papercraft. Again, if somebody else does it, I am happy to look at it. But I don't have the temperament to do it myself.
You appreciate
from afar.
Yes, you don't partake in it.
No.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I've done my fair share of print and plays. We've done some reviews of things that people have sent to us, print and play, and cutting things out and all of that and putting it together. Man, I just, arts and crafts. My kids in first grade, they still do that, but I'm good. All right, so number 3. Here we go. Blank is my favorite genre of game because of blank.
I would have to say auctions are my favorite genre of game because they're awesome. Okay.
Come on, you have to have something better than awesome.
No, because
that's a subjective.
Because the thing I like about auction games is, and it's really a reason they don't work with non-gamers very, very well at all, is because it takes a lot of skill to properly evaluate how much something is worth. And I really like that mental exercise. So games like The Princes of Florence and Goa and Age of Steam and Amun-Re, and those are all games in my top 10, and they feature auctions heavily.
Some sort of auction element
and
there.
I just love, putting something up for auction, having it go around, and it's a standoff between you and someone else. They think, this is worth 7, and you go, well, I don't know if it's worth 8. I really have to think through that. And if I make a mistake, it could be the end of me, especially in something like Age of Steam that is so unforgiving. But
sure,
I love that.
That's
so
cool.
That's my answer.
Yeah.
That's more than awesome. It's that. So what about you?
There's not enough room in that blank.
What?
There's not enough room in that blank space for all those words.
Right. So I put awesome there.
We'll go with awesome.
Conserve space. That's me.
All right. So, I don't know if I guess this would be considered a genre of game. Co-op is my favorite genre of game because that is a weird answer for me because I'm a very competitive person, but I love teamwork. So co-op is it is my favorite genre of game because I love working together to beat something. I like to compete against something that is unrelenting and designed to crush you. And there's nothing more fulfilling than doing that. And that's why Lord of the Rings, the card game, which we've talked about 17 times already this podcast, is one of my favorite games because it does that so well. And it's so it causes you to use all the different cards in everybody's deck to accomplish the goal, and everybody has their role to play. And I don't know if that's because I'm a musician and I like to play in bands and I see the teamwork that happens there, or I like sports, but to me, playing a game with somebody as opposed to against somebody, I find that very enjoyable.
And as a flip side of the auction, that is very non-gamer friendly, because I can pull out Forbidden Island with anyone and they're not going to feel overwhelmed, and I can play the game as hard as I can and still come alongside them and help them, and
you can coach them through it, and you don't feel like, oh, I'm just coaching them through this and I'm looking at their cards so I can plan my next play to destroy them.
Right.
You're playing along with them. It's very non-gamer friendly. Yes, exactly. So that's my answer.
Good answer.
So yeah, check us out on Facebook. Find our post. We'll sticky it to the top of our page, and give us your answer and fill in your blanks on these. We would love to hear what you guys have to say about these.
Okay, so tonight we're going to talk to Lance Hill, who is the designer of the game Kings of Israel, which is on Kickstarter right now as we're recording this. And Lance, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your game Kings of Israel?
Well, I'm Lance Hill. I am board game designer of Kings of Israel. Previously, I was a systems analyst, but I became a full-time stay-at-home dad, and in my free time I've been working on my game. And Kings of Israel is about the time period that the kings reigned over Israel, the northern kingdom, and all of the bad things that occurred, and each player plays a prophet or a line of prophets trying to keep evil out in idols. And that's the quick summary. It's a cooperative game, 4 players, up to 4.
And you funded, so congratulations on that.
Yeah, yep. Totally cool.
Yeah, very exciting.
So, go ahead, Jeremiah.
No, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. You had a thought. Go
I
for
didn't
it.
have a thought. I promise. No thought.
So what inspired you to go ahead and dive into this genre of Christian gaming, which, to be honest, we've talked about this some offline, but to be honest, Christian games haven't done well in the past. There's a lot of deficiencies when you delve into that. What kind of spurred you on to dive into this and develop this game?
It goes back to when I was leading a teen Bible study, and during the normal school year time we have set plans we follow, but during the summer it's sort of a free-for-all. So I was trying to think of ways to incorporate gaming into our studies, and I was thinking that maybe I could find a game that could teach some geography, since that's what a lot of games have, some good maps you can work with and so on. And so I started trying to find something that would work, but I had a hard time finding something. I tried Settlers of Canaan, but that is not very detailed. I tried doing little post-its on the areas that I thought were important, but it was too abstract. So I decided, well, maybe I could make something of my own. And originally, I think I originally started, maybe I'd just do like a crayon Rails type game with resources and shifting them around and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as I fleshed out more, I decided I wanted to make something that's all its own, not based on what biblical games frequently do is just take something and do an exact copy of it and slap Bible on it. So I wanted to do something that period of time that doesn't get hit much, and then make a good game out of it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I played Ark of the Covenant when I first started of gaming, but it's funny because they'll take the good game and put a Christian theme on it, but it seems to be lacking something. It's not even that it has a biblical theme. It's just like, oh, but we're not going to make it quite as good as the regular game. And That's disappointing.
Yeah. I had the same issue with Ark of the Covenant too. I mean, it was a fun game, but there's nothing to learn from it, or no real theme connected to it.
Yeah, I'm like theme guy when it comes to games. I can explain away really bad mechanics because of theme, maybe to a fault. But it seems that when there's a game that is a Christian or a faith-based game, they kind of, it's almost like they just phone it in because, well, it's a Christian game, and so people are going to buy it because there's not many alternatives out there for folks who want to play a game that's wrapped around a biblical theme or what. So I applaud you for wanting to go a little deeper with this. Why did you choose to go co-op with this instead of like maybe a head-to-head? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, one of the original plans I was going to do was a resource management game, since I had all the locations figured out and the resources, and I was going to do something like that. But as I was designing it, it started feeling a little cutthroat, and I was pretty sure that was going to turn off some people, because if you use it in a youth group or something and you're having some people backstab the other to get ahead, then mixed messages maybe they'd be concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
So cooperative seemed to be the way to go because, well, everyone's trying to pull each other up, and it seemed like the proper genre to put into a biblical game.
One of the questions I had about the game is, one of the things we talked about was the fact that most biblical games kind of follow this one narrative, and they want you to get to there because, hey, that was in the Bible. And so does your game offer things that maybe aren't, quote unquote, biblical in the result?
Oh yeah, that was one problem I was facing designing the game, is that a good game has decisions, and for decisions you need different results, and well, with biblical themed games you can't have different results. It's got to be what happened in the Bible. So the overall arc of the game is that in the end, Israel is going to get destroyed by Assyria. You can't prevent that. But in the meantime, you can do things in between now and then to accomplish the goals you can do. There is things like the events in the game are taken from the Bible, but the events will occur, outside of when they would normally occur in the Bible, but they're supposed to sort of represent the kind of surprises that prophets would add to a faith. They wouldn't know that specific events were going to happen the exact moment unless they were told that. And so I thought it fit okay thematically, and it's not saying this event happened at this moment, but event like it happened.
I think that's a big hang-up sometimes, and maybe hang-up's not the right word, but when you are kind of creating a historical game, there are certain events that happened at a certain time in a certain place, and how do you create interesting decisions around that sort of fixed point, or perfect information that has to be there. So it sounds like you've kind of navigated a good balance between those two. So very cool stuff.
Yeah, I haven't heard any complaints yet, and so that's good.
That's always good.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you were looking to do here is to make sure that the theme was something that could be enjoyed by people, even people who weren't Christian. So can you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, the preachiness aspect is a frequent problem in biblical board games. I mean, if you're playing directly with fellow believers, if it's sort of preachy, I guess that's fine. But I think trying to tell the audience the way that they should feel, and when certain things happen, that doesn't really work, especially when you might have non-believers. So when I designed the game, I use biblical quotes, but the biblical quotes are related to the events that are occurring. It's not to evangelize a certain idea. And so I think that's been appreciated by the atheists or of other religions that they can play the game. They've got the quotes in there, but it's very thematic and it doesn't feel forced on them.
Yeah, I think that's great, and you know, you're not going to bring this out with your game or with a group of friends to quote unquote convert them, but at the same time, I mean, for them, it's just like a mythology that is no different than playing a game about the Roman gods or the Greek gods or something like that. That's just an idea.
Or the ever-present Cthulhu theme that is running rampant in the gaming industry.
Oh, yeah.
Those are real.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm glad. I was really glad to come across this campaign because, a lot of times, Cthulhu's everywhere, and there's certain themes that just are all over the place in gaming and just culture, the geek culture, sort of, to speak. And it seems like, like we've kind of alluded to earlier, people take a biblical theme and slap it on something, and there's this, something gets left out because of just, it's that theme and we're going to get away with it. It's almost lazy to a point. And I was really excited to see what you've done with this. There's certain elements to games, Pandemic has kind of been a comparison that's been thrown out there with the co-op and somewhat how, sin and that sort of thing spreads throughout the different territories. But it looks like you've tweaked that system even more, and you've put a theme on it that's interesting and biblical, and you haven't kind of cut corners. Can you tell us a little bit more about how just some variations of what, everybody's going to go, it's Pandemic with a Bible theme, but it's more than that, right?
Oh yeah. Pandemic was definitely a big influence on the sin spreading portion of the game. It's a brilliant way of showing, it uses disease, but the way it spreads is, I think, very applicable to spread of evil. So there is the spread of evil reacting the same way as it does when there's an outbreak in Pandemic, but a lot of things have changed. Before an outbreak in Kings of Israel, you need an idol first, and idols can either appear after a certain number of cubes of sin, I call them. Then an idol appears, and then later on, sin can spread. But idols can appear anywhere because of events. Idols themselves take extra actions to destroy. Removing sin cubes or evil is you can remove it by hand, or you can do sacrifices, which are very important in the game. In the game, you want to build altars to win the game, but the altars double as a way to remove large amount of sin by using sacrifices. And so you go around collecting the resources you need, and then if you have an altar, you make a sacrifice. It removes all the evil from there, and then a little bit from the adjacent areas. And so a lot of the game is planning where to build altars and timing the sacrifices. The way the evil appears also placed differently because we have outside nations in Kings of Israel, where if an outside nation is drawn as the location where evil is occurring, then frequently a wave of cubes come in at a specific location. And so it creates dangerous zones within the board that the players have to watch. And there are many other things. Getting resources is different from Pandemic. You don't sit around for them. You acquire them. You use actions to get them. And so the players are in control of how soon they can win the game, but also if they push too hard to win the game early, then they can get overwhelmed because they're using all their actions to get those resources, and so on.
I love that we're able to put that myth to rest, that it's just rip off. I mean, it's just a mechanic at this point, right? The kind of spreading thing, and so you happen to use that mechanic just like People use deck building mechanics and worker placement mechanics and whatever else.
Yeah. I think, the problem is that we're still at a close proximity when Pandemic came out, and there's a limited number of games that use that mechanic, but I think that'll only increase, and then maybe a few years from now we won't even think of it.
Now, do you think, talking about biblical games, and we said that, it's maybe not important to use these as an evangelism tool or anything like that. So do you think it's important for people to be creating biblical games, or is it something that isn't that big a deal? If it's only a game and only mechanics and only a historical story in a sense that we're talking about, is it important?
I think it's a theme that's been greatly neglected in real strategic games. There's so many stories and events and historical aspects that you could tackle just from the Bible, and a lot of it is just not touched because of, uncertainty in the market, or the issues with creating something and then it conflicting with accounts in the Bible, things like that. But I think that there's a lot of demand within the gamer community who might be Jewish or Christian, in particular, for this kind of game to actually, to strongly use the theme and then make a fun game out of it.
Sure.
I wonder, and this, I guess we can all chime in on this thought. I wonder if, to this point, we haven't seen a lot of in-depth games with this theme, because I wonder how much of a lingering, stigma is around gaming, and, it's elves and wizards and evil, and it's all Dungeons and Dragons will, make you want to commit suicide if your character dies. And I wonder how much of that is lingering in the Christian community. So when they hear people going to gaming conventions and stuff, there's all these evil demonic things that are conjured up in their mind. I don't know. Do you think there's anything to that, where there's still just a lot to be broken through especially in Christian gaming?
That I haven't thought about that too much. I can understand where you're coming from, and I think we're starting to get further removed from the pointed evils of Magic the Gathering. Back in my day, heard some of it, and before that, Dungeons and Dragons and so on. But I think those kind of things aren't as a stumbling block for Christians or certain groups of Christians to get over. I think there's a bit of the reverse, where gamers don't want to get anywhere near a Christian game because they've been historically so terrible.
Yeah, and I think what was I going to... I lost my train of thought there. What do I think? I think nothing. It seems like, I don't know, Settlers of Catan is safe. It seems like so many people have played that game, but that's the only one. And I don't know that it's theme so much keeping it away as it is, there's a level of geekiness to it. And so my friends that I work with, the people I work with know that I'm a gamer, and I think they know I'm not playing weirdo games or cultish games, but they're still Scott's just kind of a geeky guy. Those games are geeky. And then, if they came and looked at my game collection, it's not really going to convince them otherwise. There's, Lord of the Rings and Small World and The Hobbit and stuff. I mean, there are a few games that aren't that way, but I think the biggest barrier is just the weirdness of it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think, I've been surprised every now and then you'll run across somebody that is still holding to that old school, heavy metal is the devil music, and you can't play these types of games, or but then they'll tout Lord of the Rings and Narnia because they came from Christian authors. Well, can't we create games and other things that are from Christian sources or authors or whatnot? So it was just an interesting thought I had as we started this discussion. Is I wonder if that was like the initial blockade. And, certainly we've seen throughout history, the Christian sort of response to these things. You mentioned Magic the Gathering, and redemption is still in print from what I understand. And I'm amazed by that, because everybody that I've ever talked to that's ever played that game has always told me how terrible it is. I don't know how that happens. And it's been in print for nearly as long as Magic the Gathering. So it's a strange marriage when you start talking about Christianity and geekery and gaming and stuff.
Well, I think Christians are more apt to put up with mediocrity if it follows the story that they want. So they don't mind a Christian movie, even if it's terribly acted, terribly written, terrible production, because, hey, it's telling this story that I want to tell. And it's very blatant about it, usually. And so they've sacrificed art for the story. And I just
Are you speaking badly against Kirk Cameron right now, or?
Truth be told, I had fireproof in my head when I said that. No. Yeah, but I mean, everybody loves those movies. Let's go see the new Courageous, and it's fine, and I love that it's helping people. But I don't know. I don't want to get on a soapbox, but
I'm behind you 100% on that one. I'm a little bit of a movie nerd also, and the movies that I do get encouraged to by other Christians, I know I just can't watch because I know they're going to be so terrible. But that's our example within our community of that kind of art, and so it's painful. And anyways,
it is painful. I will be at my house watching Groundhog Day and The Mission and those kind of movies where I can feel like, oh, this is somebody that's not preaching; they're just living out what's already in them in an artful way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who it was that I heard giving a sermon or speaking at a conference or something and saying, at what point did Christianity flip? Some of the greatest pieces of music, of classical music and works of art were inspired by Christianity. You think of the Sistine Chapel and the Hallelujah Chorus and things like that. The Renaissance was full of spiritual work, and at some point mediocrity was accepted because you couldn't give your all into your art because it was some sort of slight to your faith or whatever. I think we see that spill over into today's culture and music and, even into gaming, as we're talking about. Why can't Christians create really, really good games that may be biblically themed or may just have good values placed into them? I don't know where that switch got flipped, but I wish we could see it flipped the other way more often. And with that, I'll get off my soapbox.
That's another good soapbox. And we've definitely got a lowest common denominator thing going on within the Christian community of, well, let's appeal to the majority that we think we can appeal to, even if it doesn't have much to redeem it. We'll just try to get the most money out of this situation as possible without putting a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, and that's often what happens. Those are the kind of things that sell well because they are Christian, and then, oh, well, this is why we do it. And then, oh, crud, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I remember being a teenager going, hey, I think if we were a Christian band, we could get signed right away because all of them are terrible, You only have to be pretty mediocre and you can go get a deal, It definitely is a cyclical thing.
Now, Lance, I'm looking at your Board Game Geek profile, and your top 10 is pretty stinking heavy. You have games like Die Macher in there, Dominant Species, Through the Ages, Teach You. So you like heavy games. You're not somebody that's like a dabbler and then decided to create this Christian game. You're in it. So, do you have any ideas for maybe a heavier themed game rolling around in your head or anything?
I don't have anything heavy at this point. Right now, I'm playing the Christian Jewish angle where if I'm going to bring a new game into the system that's good, I'm going to have to make sure that it's easy to understand and a lot of people will be able to jump in and play it. I don't want to make a great Christian game that's too heavy and then just dies off and then removes any chance of another game in the future. So okay. I'll build up to that, but at this point, no.
And I guess along those lines, I've been curious about Kings of Israel. I have actually, like, in a 4-player game of Pandemic, I have actually never beaten the game. With 4 players, I find it much more difficult than with just a few. What difficulty level would you say the game is? Is it really, really tough to get through, or can players kind of walk through it if they're novice? How would you rate the game in that regard?
Well, I did try to make it scalable. So if you play the game straight up on the normal level, it's going to be pretty tough for most people, I'd say. But if they want to play the easy level, then I think they'll have a lot of success. I've played with my nephews who are 8, 10, and 14, and they do fine on the easy level. But if we move it up, then they would have trouble.
Gotcha.
Good to know. I don't want it to be too easy or too hard.
No,
yeah, you want to find that sweet spot.
Yeah. And if you play the False Prophet expert version, it's very tough.
Now, what are some other co-op games you've played and enjoyed?
I like Space Alert. I like the real-time aspect of that one.
Mm-hmm.
Wife and I play Ghost Stories sometime. I like that one's got it can be pretty tough. Pandemic is obviously a solid game. Those are the big ones that off the top of my head. Now,
Ghost Stories is pretty stinking dark. Is that something you think you're going to bring out with the kids? What are your thoughts on that when they get older?
I think once they understand that it's, they're not going to be chased by ghosts or anything like that, and this is based on another religion's part of it, at least mythology or what have you, then I think I would be fine bringing them in. It is pretty dark when you think about it, I guess.
Yeah, and some of the artwork, like ladies with bleeding eyes and stuff, I thought.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's a fun game. I really do like it, but I thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to get this or not. But anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah,
I just downloaded the app for that. It was like free a few weeks ago. I haven't played it yet, but you guys are probably going to make me play it tonight. So thanks.
It's a really good game.
Oh yeah.
So I hear.
All right. Well, did you have anything else, Jeremiah?
I think we have covered all of my questions. I'm really looking forward. I'm so glad that this funded. It looks like you're knocking down some stretch goals. Yep. And, I hope this opens the door for you and others to continue to create good games, wrapped around biblical themes. And, the gaming industry needs it. I think there's definitely a market for it. And so kudos to you. I really appreciate you putting the time and the effort into it, and look forward to seeing it hit shelves soon.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Lance. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So we have 2 new segments. First there was Fill in the Blank.
Da-da-da-da-da.
And now we have, this is a cool one because one of our frequent YouTube commenters to our YouTube channel, Theology of Games, you should go there, it's awesome.
It is awesome.
His name is Alden, I'm sorry if I screw up your name, but it's Alden Schoenberg, I think.
Sure.
So, if it's not that, let me know, but
he will let us know.
He gave us a terrific idea for a new segment called Fire and Ice, because my name is Firestone, and Jeremiah's name is Isley, so it's kind of like fire and eyes. But that sounds weird, so we're just going to say ice.
So we just use ice.
So it's a play on our name, but also the idea is that we're going to each talk about a game that is on fire for us. One we played and we loved and it was great. And then another one that is kind of icy toward. We played it and we're like, you know what, that wasn't very good. So we're going to talk about them.
Yeah, and thank you, Alden, or Alden. Is it Alden, do you think?
I don't know.
Dude, let us know.
I'm sorry.
We don't want to screw that up, but
we really
just
appreciate the idea. It was cool.
But it was a very cool idea, and so we're running with it. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to do both of our fire ones and then both of our ice ones?
I think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think so too. You go first.
Okay. My fire is a game called Suburbia. It's kind of like SimCity.
Wasn't that a Steve Martin movie? Or Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks? The Burbs?
The Burbs? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Steve
Suburbia.
Martin did move to the Suburbia in My Blue Heaven when he was a gangster.
When he was a gangster.
Movie.
I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like SimCity, the board game. You are building a community and it's another auction. You're auctioning off kind of tiles that each have different things on them. So it might have a landfill or an apartment building or a restaurant or a mint or things like that. And you're putting them into your city and it's interacting in interesting ways. So you might put something down and it might gain you some victory points or some income. But it's also really thematic because if you put the airport near a residential tile, it will increase your income, but it will decrease your popularity as kind of the mayor of this city. So it's stuff like that just all these tiles have different interactions with how they work and they make sense. And it is a really great game. I'm planning to have a review of it up very soon. It's fun. And they just came out with an expansion that I can't wait to try either. That just came out at Essence Spiel. I totally butchered that.
Yes, you did.
Oh, wow. So, anyway, Suburbia is a terrific game, in my opinion.
Suburbia. I will have to check that one out. I have not played it, but you have talked it up a lot, and it sounds good. My fire game, the game that I'm hot on right now, is Two Rooms and a Boom, which is probably kind of a little bit of a goofy name for a game, but Two Rooms and a Boom, it is on Kickstarter right now and will be when this goes live, and it's totally crushing it on Kickstarter. It's a game that is in the genre of hidden identity, secret roles, that kind of thing. But it is unlike any of them I've ever played. I've done Werewolf and Mafia, and we love the Resistance. But there are so many unique things about it that it stands out. And I love the fact you can play like 6 people to 30 or 40 people. There are tons and tons of special roles, and it takes a lot of the things that you don't like about certain games in this genre, and it allows you to do them, and it manipulates it very, very well. All of the roles that we've played were just super fun, and there was so much deception, but there were ways to find things out. I actually was super excited. I had a chance to play with one of the co-designers during when I did the Extra Life event, and we played for 24 hours. We played games all day long. It was really fun. Alan Girding, showed up with the game and taught it. There was about 16 of us that played. And it was a group of people who had never played anything more than euchre or Monopoly. And there were people there that had been playing games longer than I have. And everybody just equivocally had the same fun experience. We played it the first time and everybody was hyped to play it again. We played it like 8 times that night. Just super, super fun game. And they're doing really well on Kickstarter. And this is one you can get it now. You can print and play now. It's always free on print and play, but pay $20, back it on Kickstarter, and get the cards printed for free. You will spend more than $20 on photo paper and printer ink to print out the cards. So just pay the $20 and get the game.
Yeah, I got to play 2 games of it, but with small groups, and it's interesting. I could definitely see the potential in this game. But everyone I've talked to is like, it's going to be better with more people. It just creates more tension and dynamics and things like that. So I enjoyed it.
The thing we noticed, we played it pretty late. So as we played it, we lost numbers. In the last game, we had like 10 or 11 people. The more people that are in it, the more of the special roles you can put in. Mm-hmm. And those really mix things up. And so people are lying and faking like they're one of the special roles. And, so you have to determine, okay, are they that special role that have that trait, or are they lying and, pretending to be like that? And so it really adds a lot of intrigue. And all the roles, you can swap them in and out. So the replayability becomes even greater that way.
Yeah, you should definitely go check out and back that game. It's a good price for tons of gameplay. Definitely.
All right, so what's your ice? What are you cold on right now?
Well, last podcast, we talked about what is the game that you're most looking forward to playing. And for me, it was one called Yido that was supposed to be like Princes of Florence mixed with Lords of Waterdeep and stuff like that. So I got to play it. And I did not like it at all.
No?
No, first of all, it took 4 hours to play. Now,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. It would come down, these were 4 new players to the game, but it still took 4 hours. And then what made that worse is, so we played for 4 hours, and then I lost because on the last turn, one of the guys played a backstab card on me, and it cost me 6 points.
Oh, no.
So, I hate games that have attack cards like that, generally. Now, there are some games where I'm more forgiving of it, but
sure.
In a game that's like 4 hours, tons of planning, and then backstab, you lose after 4 hours. Are you kidding me? I just feel like no matter how much fun I was having, you just wasted my time because you made me play this intricate, complex game with all kinds of mechanisms and moving parts, and then I lost because somebody played a special attack action card on me.
Because somebody had one card.
Right. I hate that.
Did you in. Yeah, that sounds excruciating.
Oh, it was annoying.
And I know how you love long games too, so.
Well, I don't mind long games. Some long games I don't mind. So this is just a weird thing about me. Twilight Imperium, long game with attack action cards. Some reason I'm totally fine with that. I don't know if it's the theme. I don't know if I'm going into it knowing, okay, there's going to be that aspect of this. I don't know why I'm more forgiving, but I am. But in this game, I just wanted to throw it across the room. And then, so it's kind of a worker placement too, and a bunch of turns turned out to be like a couple of the good spots would get taken, and so then you're just kind of left with totally blah spots to put your people, like, oh, I guess I'll go there. And then there were times I would go to a spot and not even do the bonus thing I could do just because there was no point to it. Like, oh, I could look at that stack of cards again and know what order they're in. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
It was super disappointing to me. Boo.
Yeah, that's a bummer. So I have kind of a shocker on the game that I'm cold on right now.
Do tell.
And you're probably gonna pass out when I say this, but hear me out. The game that I'm cold on right now is The Resistance.
Oh.
You okay?
I just passed out.
Okay, good. So, but let me qualify that statement. I'm cold on the original version of the game with no plot cards and not the Avalon version, like the straight up plain version of the game. I've come to the point where I've decided, and actually this happened when you and I played this game about a month ago. One of the rare times we get to play games together. We played original version, no plot cards, no nothing. And I was like, I really miss the Merlin aspect. I miss the plot cards. I miss the assassin side of it. I've played a ton of The Resistance lately. Over the past, 3 months or so, I've probably played close to 5 or 6 hours of The Resistance with everything from 6 to the full complement of 10 players. And it just adds so much more to the game when you have somebody on the good side who knows what's going on and is trying to manipulate the game themselves. So to me, I don't know that I can ever go back to the original vanilla, plain, nothing else added in version of The Resistance.
Okay, I get that. And so would you say that even with brand new players, you'd be like, well, just throw them in there anyway? And I mean, that's why we played vanilla with those people.
Sure.
When Jeremiah and I played, it was with a few youth pastors, a couple of whom had never played the game. So we thought, it's what you typically do. You go, all right, we'll just play vanilla.
Yeah.
And then you never get around to playing anything but vanilla.
Yeah, at the Extra Life event just a few weeks ago, we had 10 players at the table, and I would say maybe 3 of them had played the game before, and we played the Avalon version with Merlin and the Assassin, and we just threw them in. And the first game was a little rocky because they were trying to feel out, why certain people are trying to do certain things depending on what role they are. But after that, they started to catch on, and we ended up playing, 4 or 5 games in a row because everybody was like, oh, I get it now. This is cool. And they knew what they were supposed to do if they were Merlin or if they were a good guy or a bad guy or the assassin. So they started to tune in more. It slows the learning curve down a little bit because of, there's some extra added stuff to keep track of, but I think it just adds so much more to the game, and I probably will never play without that.
I totally get you. I understand.
I know that was a shocker to hear.
It was a shocker, but now that you explained it, it's a less shocking shocker.
Yes, I still love The Resistance, but I love the added flavor of it.
And it's interesting you say that because about it being ice, one of the guys in our group is getting a little burned out on it, and it's his favorite game, just like me. We've both we started playing at the same time. We both kind of made this realization a few months ago, like, you know what? That's our favorite game. And but he's a little burned out on it because the meta game of that, and I'm not exaggerating, he is a spy 3/4 of the time when he plays that game. I know that's not really mathematically feasible, but he really is. Almost
but somehow
all
it
the
happens.
Time. Yeah. So we joke like, oh, that's the spy, and it's usually right. And so in his mind, he immediately gets blackballed as the spy, which often happens to be true, but he still feels this pressure like, I'm not having fun because I'm immediately discounted because of this metagame that's going on, of everyone assuming I am, even when I'm not, which isn't very often.
Right.
So, anyway.
I get that myself often. I'm not often a spy. I would say it's probably more 50-50, but because I know the game so well, if I'm playing it with people that kind of know the game or who are new, I'm often just suspected as being a spy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it doesn't burn me out on the game, but I totally understand that, like, people are just always suspicious of me because I'm always being vocal about what I'm thinking and trying to throw stuff out there. But I try to be consistent, whoever I am, so that people aren't suspicious of me, but somehow that brings suspicion upon me.
Okay, so for this episode's review, we are going to review the new game from Mayfair Games called Asgard's Chosen.
That's right. It is a clever game of deck manipulation and area control, and as you might have guessed, it's like Viking Nordic stuff because it says Asgard's in the title.
Which is cool, because I've played plenty of games with mythologies from, Roman and Greek and stuff like that, but not many games have hit the Norse mythology, and I actually really liked that.
Yeah, I thought that was actually what drew me to this game was the fact that it kind of hit that mythology, that genre of fantasy that you don't see much of. You see a lot of, like you said, mythologies or just straight up fantasy with elves and dwarves and whatnot. But yeah, that was a pretty cool thing that really drew me to this game at first, was that theme of the Norse sort of stuff.
Yeah, and so you have to play this game with Rise of the Valkyries playing in the background at full speed?
I did not.
Oh, well,
Maybe I should have.
That explains maybe some things.
I'm not sure where to go with that. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about components, and then we'll talk about how the game plays, and then we'll give our thoughts. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So components, basically there are several different types of cards, which the card artwork I thought was really cool. It was very stylistic, very what you would think for this genre, this theme. Mm-hmm. I thought it was very well done. And then there's these weirdly shaped tiles that have different types of terrain, as well as towns and enchanted lands or enchanted realms that you, as at the setup of the game, you take turns placing those and kind of creating a customized board every time you play the game. They give you suggestions for the amount of players and how you set it up, but you can kind of do your own thing too. There's a few rules to follow and how you set that up, but you can kind of create a custom game, so every time you play it, it's a little different. And then there's the obligatory control markers that are wooden cubes, and there are two different types of meeples that you get. You get a male hero and a female hero, and those are in the 4 different colors because it's 2 to 4 players, or actually 1 to 4. There's a solo version as well.
Yes, there is. Yeah, the board manipulation is interesting. Like you can create your own board, but I kept thinking as I was playing this, like, how would I make this different than the setup they gave us? I mean, it doesn't feel like, remember that one game where we had it going this way, and wow, that was crazy. It was so different. Well, no, it's just maybe this land is next to a different land than it was last game, but is that really going to affect things? Not in the slightest, really.
Yeah, I wondered, if maybe you clumped some certain types of land together, somebody could try to, gain all control of those, and which would help them muster different cards in a better way. I don't know. I see what you're saying there. I could see coming up with cool configurations that could make it interesting, but yeah, I don't know how much that's going to make or break your gameplay experience.
I like the components. I like the cards. I agree with you. The art is different and cool, and it's not some of them I suppose are kind of your typical fantasy things, but then, like you said, some of them are very stylized, and some of them are. It's obvious they didn't use the same artists, and that kind of adds some interest to it. And I like the cards. They aren't real. They're very thin So I feel like if you play this game, you might want to sleeve them, because it seems like after a couple of plays, they're going to be kind of grubby and well worn.
Yeah, I even noticed halfway into the first play, as I was shuffling my cards a lot, I felt they kind of got a little weak and worn a little bit. They definitely broke in pretty fast, so I would agree with that. So, gameplay. Shall we move on to gameplay?
We shall.
Yes.
The first thing we noticed when we were playing, well, we're setting it up, and I had read the rules, and then I was explaining the rules and the setup and everything, and we just got lost. We were trying to figure out exactly what cards exactly do you start with, and it was very confusing to us to just try and sit down and figure out where we're supposed to start with this. And maybe that was just our group. Maybe you didn't have a problem with that when you played, but the very first time we played, it was hard.
You know, I experienced the same sort of thing. I don't know if I like it so much when rule books give you a set of introductory rules. And there was a lot of that, I feel, in the rule book of, if you're playing for the first time, use the card with this icon and put these cards in your hand to start off with, but then don't use those. And, just kind of weird exclusions or exceptions for the first time you're playing it. I tried to kind of ignore that and just jump in and go, okay, we're just going to play the game, how you're supposed to play the game. But yeah, it seemed really slow to start. The learning curve seems really, really tough to just jump in. But for the listeners, the basics of the gameplay are you get to use, there are 10 gods that you get in your starting deck. There's a little element of deck building to the game. So those are your starting deck. And you can use those gods for favor. So you can play that at the beginning of the round and use the favor text on that card. Or you can, in some other round, appease them. And that's the goal of the game. You want to appease a certain number of gods depending on how long you want to be playing. And whoever appeases them by doing whatever is asked of you wins. So you can play a god and you use that favor, and that can be various things, which I thought was kind of cool. There was a lot of variation in how you can kind of select a bonus for that round, so to speak.
Yeah, and that created some tough decisions. So, like the god card Thor, the favor is you get +1 power to all your attacks this round. Oh, that's really cool. But then you cannot appease it this round, and that is defeat a defending hero. Well, those two kind of go together. If you get the +1, you're going to defeat a hero, but then you can't appease the god card. So it made for some interesting decisions on which way you went with those.
Yeah, I would say I almost experienced some analysis paralysis with that, because you start the game with 5 gods in your hand, and you're like, okay, what am I going to try to do? Obviously, you're probably not going to appease one on the first turn, but okay, am I going to try to set something up and hold on to this one? But yeah, it definitely made for some really interesting decision making because of how those cards have 2 purposes. So yeah, once you move onto that, after you play a god and gain its favor, then you can kind of move your guys around and try to take over these different areas of the board, and you move into these lands, and if there's nobody there, it's uncontested, but there's a militia that is there protecting that land, so you can't just take it over. And so you draw cards and you have to battle them, or if it is controlled by one of your opponents, there's militia there, and the defending character or player is trying to defend that, and they're playing cards. And so your cards actually end up having multiple purposes, because your god cards can be used for favor, used for appeasing a god, or you can use them to attack and defend. So I found like a lot of the cards had just a lot of different uses as you're playing this card, and you're like, okay, am I going to hold it for this? Am I going to use it for this? Am I going to use it for attack, for defend, et cetera, et cetera. And then that's kind of the turn after you're done battling, you get to muster a card from the Tish, which is some term from, I'm sure, Nordic, whatever.
I can't believe you don't know that word.
It's not in my vocabulary, you know.
Isn't that a ZZ's Top song? I'm just looking for some Tish.
That's exactly the motivation that they wrote.
Oh, okay. All right.
Totally.
And they look like Vikings anyway, so...
Right.
Move on. I'm sorry.
So then you can muster a card out of there using somewhat specific territorial control mechanics there, because if you don't control or have a hero on a certain type of terrain, you can't muster that guy because you're not there, you don't have any influence. And then everybody renews and you do it all over again. So that is a very quick overview of the gameplay. Did I miss anything there that is sticking out to you?
No, essentially it's a game where you're trying to, I'm going to say build a deck, but it's not a deck builder. You're kind of building this deck, but also using it to gain some area control. So it's a deck manipulation, I suppose, with some area control, and you're using bonuses to go in and defeat things, and depending on where you're coming from or where you're going to, you get different bonuses, and all these different cards you can play from your hand to give you bonuses, and there's really actually a lot going on in this game. It's not as light as I expected it to be.
I would agree with that. It was much, much deeper than I originally expected. And, once I started reading the rule book, a lot of it makes sense thematically, because you're kind of going into these territories, and as you go along, it's like, oh, I'm in a bog now, so I can muster bog people or bog cards because I'm in there, or I control a land that they're in. So a lot of that stuff made sense. But there was, then there's certain territories are wind territories and others are water. There's just a lot of layers to the game and to the rules and the mechanics and how everything interacts. There's a lot to keep track of as you play this game.
Yeah, in fact, the muster phase that you mentioned when you're getting new guys, there were so many other things going on that I almost never thought, oh, I want to get that guy, so therefore I'm going to go into this land so that later on I can muster him. I basically completely ignored that. And
yeah,
I mean, maybe part of that was just I didn't know what I was doing, and but I basically ignored that. And if I attacked something, it was because I was trying to appease a god card,
sure,
or I was trying to just hit an opponent that I thought I could beat. But I don't think I one time thought I want that card, so I'm going to go into here in order to do that. It was just kind of like, oh, what can I buy? Oh, nothing. Okay, well, I guess I'm not much.
Yeah, there's also some hand management too, because your cards serve multiple purposes, like we were just saying. So, okay, am I going to use these to attack, or am I going to use them to defend, or do I use them to then buy, a card by mustering it? Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of moving parts as you try to strategize out your turn, and I can totally see people overthinking and rightly so, overthinking each and every turn and every phase of their turn, because there are just so many moving parts to it.
Yeah, and I think the moving parts thing is one of the big disappointments for me in this game. When I think about the attacks, when we move in and attack someone, whether there was someone there or not, that whole attack process is a big, I guess, hassle. I mean, I was kind of the guy that was closest to the cards in the game, and so you'd flip over a militia, and you'd have to check this number and check this terrain and see if this bonus counted, and da-da-da-da-da. And so I was the guy that was adding and subtracting and minus this and plus this and do this and go, okay, here's what it finally is. And you're doing that every single turn for every single movement, basically. And by the end, I was just overwhelmed. I thought, wow, for an English guy, I just did a ton of arithmetic, and It didn't feel like, oh, I'm fighting the Norse gods. It felt like, oh, I'm battling a spreadsheet.
Right. I got to get my visor and my adding machine out and start.
It was a slog at the end.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I think battling is probably what ruined this game for me, what brought me down, because there are just so many little tweaky things. The terrain type, because of the wind and the water, or the actual terrain itself, the battleground, or the area that you're attacking from. There's so many things that come into play that you have to check against. And there's just this huge list of, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Do you get this bonus? Do you not get this bonus? Can you not use this one because it's an opposing terrain or an opposite? It was just, it is super duper overwhelming for a game that you're essentially just trying to take over this land. Like, I get why it's all there, but I think it could have been streamlined more, and it could have made the game play quicker and eliminate, like I said, there's just so much room before you even get to battling. There's so much room for analysis paralysis because of the multifunctions of your cards. And then you get to, okay, now we have to do math and cross-checking and all that stuff. At that point, you're just like, oh my gosh, I just want to play some cards and beat this guy up.
Right, and even in the battles, there's a fair amount of randomness. I might turn over a militia that's a very small power, and then someone else might turn over one and beat them easily, and then someone else flips over a militia, and it's a huge, tough monster. And,
right.
Oh, well, sorry, because of the flip of a card, you don't get to go in there.
You know me, I'm not one to back away from some randomness.
Oh, I know.
But it did seem like every time someone else was trying to take over a territory, they were pulling like ones. Mm-hmm. And then I would go to take over something, and it's, 2 monsters, and I have to defeat 8 points of power before I can even get to the defending hero. And I'm like, I'm just, forget it, I'm done, you know?
It was frustrating.
It seemed, again, it's the pull of the card, it's whatever. But man, sometimes it's tough. It just got a little too much. And you could say, yeah, you can strategize against that if you're going into a territory where your cards are going to get bonuses. But that's not always the case. You may not be able to access that territory. There's just so many things to keep track of, that it's hard to go, okay, I'm going to hold these 2 cards because I'm going to attack this type of territory, and I'll get bonuses for those cards. And that's, again, is if you get the luck of the draw to have enough cards of the same type.
Right.
It just keeps going around and around and around. So.
Yeah, just it was a very fiddly.
Yes, fiddly or tweaky, as I like to say. I look at the game and I go, man, there's a cool game somewhere inside this, but I think it was trying to be too clever for its own good. I could see the potential in this game, but man, I just think they overthought things.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to complexity in a game, goodness knows, and a lot of moving parts. That's fine when it feels natural and you can go, okay, maybe even at the beginning it's a little difficult to get this thing going, but you get into a rhythm and you go, okay, this all makes sense, and now I know what comes next. I'm thinking of Mage Knight here, which has a ton of stuff going on in it.
Right.
But you get into it and you go, okay, now I know what I'm doing, and it just clicks.
you go through one turn in that game and you're like, oh, I know how to work this game, and it's great because there are a lot of decisions that I can make, and it's strategic and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel we've had our differences on games, but I know we both agree on this one. And sadly enough, I have to say, man, leave this one on the shelf. The concept is great. The theme is awesome, but there's just too many tweaky, or as you like to say, fiddly things about it to make it click along the way that it could have. So that's my rating, is leave this one on the shelf.
I can't believe we agree on disliking a game. We've had plenty of times where we agree that a game is good, but
yes,
this may be the first time where we're both like, yep, that's a bad one. It's just, it's fiddly. All the little things that it tried to do that didn't do real well, they just add up to a game that's just not very good. The components that aren't great, the fiddliness of the battles, the rule book. I have read hundreds and hundreds of rule books in my life. This is one of the worst.
I felt like I was working really, really hard to try to do something that I enjoy. And that just kind of doesn't fly for me.
Yes, at the end of the day, this was a game that felt like work and not fun work. So,
yeah,
I'm going to agree. Leave it on the shelf. I'm sorry. I'm friends with Morgan, the designer, on Facebook, and we've had some conversations about things we have in common, and I feel terrible, but I don't like this game. I'm sorry, Morgan.
I see a great potential game here, but I think it was overthought, and so there you go. We do want to thank Mayfair Games because they supplied us with review copies, and that was super awesome of them. And, it's just one of those things where it didn't hit us where it wasn't in our wheelhouse. But we really appreciate them helping us out by supplying us with games to play so that we could tell you guys what we thought about it.
Thanks for listening to that review. And do we know what we have going on next month?
Relic Expedition.
Yes, we will be reviewing Relic Expedition, which is a fun family game. It
is. It's a very cool exploratory adventurer type of game. I think we both like this one, so it'll be quite the contrast from what we just did to poor Asgard's Chosen.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we do have a copy to give away of that as well. So tune in next time and get a chance. You'll find out how you can win Relic Expedition. We will be giving that away.
Well, thanks for joining us on podcast number 4. We hope you enjoyed it. We certainly did.
We had a fabulous time. And we would appreciate it if you would tell your friends about how awesome we are, which won't take much of your time. So,
because we're really awesome.
Share us with your friends. Come visit us on theologyofgames.com and our Facebook page and Twitter and all of that stuff. We love to hear what you guys think about what we think and what we're doing. And all that fun stuff. We want to thank Mayfair Games for supplying Asgard's Chosen for us.
Indeed.
And also thank Lance Hill for coming on and talking about his game and all the fun stuff that we chatted with him about. And is there anybody else we need to thank?
You, the listener.
Oh, the most important person right now. That's right. You, the listener.
No, we really do appreciate you guys, and keep your questions coming. We really enjoy answering the questions from you guys. They're all interesting and funny, and they make us think. So keep them coming because they give us things to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, because otherwise we're like making up our own questions to ask, and it's like Twitter user 44127 asks. And that's just us.
Right. And it ends up just being Jeremiah asking questions about Star Wars trivia that he knows he's going to win.
And I'm going to totally school you on.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Yeah.
All right.
So
well,
anyway.
We'll talk to you guys later. And make sure you check us out online and YouTube and all that stuff. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you.
And we will see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Theology of Games podcast with Jeremiah Isley and Scott Firestone. If you enjoyed this episode, we would appreciate your subscription to the podcast and your review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day, and until next time, Get a game on the table.
I'm guessing he's been sacked by like a 300-pound linebacker more than you have, though.
Yes.